Joining me now is Royal Editor for the Daily Mirror, Russell Myers. Russell, what's on the agenda for the French President's visit to the UK?
Well, hello again, Caro. I think it's really exciting because a lot of people are saying that this is possibly a precursor to the US state visit. Of course, Donald Trump coming to the UK in September. But there is a lot of excitement both at Downing Street and at the Palace, and indeed our French counterparts about this state visit, because it comes at, of course, a crucial time throughout Europe and the Middle East. So I'm sure that will be on the agenda for King Charles and President Macron. But as you said, there's a lot to look forward to in terms of the spectacle that we'll see. There'll be an inspection of the Guard of Honour. We're at Windsor Castle this time, of course, because of the resurfacing of Buckingham Palace is reaching its final stages, just a couple of years to go in this huge sort of $500 million project that's being undertaken over 10 years. So we will see a state banquet, we will see a carriage ride through the streets of Windsor. The Prince and Princess of Wales are scheduled to be there. We hope that Catherine can make that, of course. She's had a bit of a stop-start period towards the beginning of this year. But I think the King and Queen will definitely hope that there's a good reception, a few crowds on the street, certainly for President Macron and the First Lady Bridget as well.
Now, that's obviously next week, but this week the King and Queen have been up in Scotland. Charles in particular, he looks like he's having the time of his life. What's this trip involved?
Well, every year the royals, certainly the King and Queen, go to Scotland, and it's known as Scotland Week, Holyrood Week. It's a chance to sort of shine a spotlight on the communities in Scotland. Of course, you know, Scotland has a huge affiliation with the royal family, part of affection for the late Queen. Of course, it's where she passed away in 2022. And Charles was there. He's sort of meeting locals, inviting them to Holyrood House as well. And, you know, sampling some whiskey. We saw him out and about. There's some garden parties that he attended as well. So you know, this part of the calendar is very, very important. There was some great weather up there as well this week. So all encompassing, it's a really important part for the royal family.
We understand as part of that trip, the King and Queen paid tribute to the late Queen. What was that about?
Yes, they did indeed. Of course, St Giles was the cathedral where the late Queen was laid to rest before her journey down to London. And there was a commemorative stone laid at the cathedral. Of course, that was where 30,000 people queued up in the rain over 24 hours a day to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II after she passed away at Balmoral. And the King and Queen, you know, had that sort of moment of solemnness, I think. But it was, again, sort of making sure that connection to the local community was unending. And certainly, I think the local community will really, really appreciate that in Scotland.
On other things, and still in news this week, but King Charles is apparently giving up the royal train. And obviously, we remember when the Queen gave up the royal yacht Britannia. What's the reasoning behind this?
Well, of course, I mean, those pictures and images went around the world, and they continue to be shown now about the sort of the emotion that she showed at the time. But this is really down to finances. I mean, the royal train has been going in some guise or another since the 70s and 80s, the current 9 carriages that are pulled by 2 steam locomotives. It was, of course, the late Queen's favourite mode of transport. It allowed her to sort of travel up and down the country. But in the last few years, it really hasn't been used at all. There's only a couple of times last year I was doing the royal finances at Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, going through the finer details of the figures, how much the royal family cost. And it was only taken out twice last year. And I think that working it out, it probably cost about $120,000 just to take it out of the station for those 2 times. It costs about $2 to $3 million just to keep it going, just to keep it housed. You know, it's difficult to find parts for it, such as its age. And when the King is looking at royal finances, he's got to try and sort of balance the books, look at where the money is being spent. And the royal train just certainly isn't financially viable at the moment. So it is going to go. It's going to be consigned to history. Hopefully it'll be in a museum, may get split up. So there'll be a lot of transport museums in the UK and possibly throughout the world who will fancy a piece of that royal history. But I think when you're spending so much money on Buckingham Palace and beyond, it's probably the right decision.
Yeah, fair enough. And I guess it's just another part of the slimming down of the royal family. On to Prince William, and we know one of his key area of advocacy is homelessness. He's just celebrated 2 years of his Homelessness project. Here it is.
Out of the 6 locations for Homeless, where each location is developing an innovative housing project, the idea being that we can demonstrate the models that work and then can be scaled, and all that data is then released and publicly sourced. You envisage it, you talk about it, you think about it, and you go, my goodness, there's quite a lot to do here. But then to see it actually come to fruition and go and meet a tenant and a family in a house and go, this has come together because of all the great people in the room and in the organisation. Prevention is just the biggest part of this. We can do so much if we prevent it happening in the first place, so people don't go on that journey of poor mental health, sleeping rough on the street, complete family breakdown.
We know this is an area he's passionate about. We talk about it occasionally on the show. And how do you, from the perspective of watching this as a royal journalist, how's he having an impact in what is, I mean, this is a vexed issue, a very worthy cause, but a very vexed issue.
Well, it is. It's certainly a very political issue as well, because Prince William is going to need the support of the government. He's going to need support of local communities in order to bring those charities and local sectors together. And it's a very, very ambitious project. I was actually in the room with him in Sheffield in North England earlier this week when he was speaking alongside the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who has his own sort of charity as well, working in the homelessness space. Stephen Bartlett of Dragon's Den fame, he's a British entrepreneur, very impressive guy who has become an ambassador for Homewards. And it's trying to essentially look at the causes of homelessness and trying to solve the intricacies of what happens when people end up homeless. It's not just street homelessness. There are 300,000 people in Britain alone who are either sofa surfing in temporary accommodation. This affects children's lives where they're being bounced around temporary accommodation or B&Bs. And so they're trying to look at that concept and try and change it in 6 areas in the UK. And then hopefully that can be rolled out throughout the local authorities in Britain and beyond. So it is an ambitious project. But as Gordon Brown told me on Tuesday, he was saying, it's a fantastic achievement what's already been done. Prince William is a convener of peoples and organisations, and he's certainly continuing his mother's legacy. We look at what Princess Diana did for AIDS and HIV sufferers, and of course what she did in the homelessness space, which really has been Prince William's inspiration. So long may it continue. And I think, as Gordon Brown said, he sees this as a real success story in the making. So good luck to him.
And how fabulous. And obviously, those comments around prevention being the most important part. If you can stop people getting on the slippery slope, it makes dealing with that issue so much easier. And just lastly, the UK Telegraph has reported that the Ukraine has apparently applied to host the Invictus Games. How did this come about? What do we know so far?
Well, of course, we saw Prince Harry just a few months ago travelling to Ukraine. That was a surprise trip. He turned up to support the Ukrainian former servicemen and women who are in hospital, still undergoing some treatment, and really life-changing the results have been for the whole Invictus family. So could this be a prospect? Of course, in next year we have it back in the UK. That'll be quite an interesting proposition for Prince Harry, because it's been a long time since 2014 he hasn't been in the UK for the Invictus Games. We're all around the world. Of course, we were in Sydney just a few years ago, but it would be a fantastic achievement if Ukraine could do it. And I think what we'll be looking to is possibly sort of for 5 to 10 years' time of Ukraine. I mean, the country could be very, very different there. Awful lot of issues there with the ongoing war. But I think if Prince Harry can support Ukraine in any way he can, he certainly will be trying to.
Russell Myers, as always, thank you so much for your insights.